Organizational Sherlocks, the podcast where business meets psychology and your organizational puzzles meet their match.
Join us for captivating stories and practical solutions to unravel your toughest challenges.
I'm Dr. Elizabeth Fleming.
And I'm Morgan Ashworth, your guides to a prescription for business success.
Let's dive in.
I'm very excited for this episode, listeners, because today we're going to be talking about bite-sized modalities, but making it bite-sized. So we're going to try to do about a 15-minute episode for you.
Sounds great to me. Yeah. I think the biggest thing, just to kind of introduce what we're talking about with bite-sized modalities, is really that not everything has to be some earth-shattering, huge intervention or coaching conversation. We don't have to bring it in and help develop people by, dumping tons of information. Think about drinking from a fire hose, right? We don't need to do that. We can break it up into smaller pieces. One word that comes to mind for me, and I'm sure Morgan, you will know what I'm talking about here, is around scaffolding, right? How can we build a foundation just like building a house and then be able to kind of build on that so that you have a full house or a full development or a full skill set. But by doing that in small chunks, right? Pick your paint color, pick your door handles, that kind of stuff, and be able to kind of build on those things as you go.
And you also don't need to have those decisions made right off the bat.
No.
We talk about in another way we can look at it is like those bite-sized goals. So, you might have a goal that's like far away, really far away, and it just seems impossible to capture. And so then you want to build yourself stepping stones to get there. Usually, though, you only can build the first few stepping stones, and then you have to build the next few, and then you have to build the next few. So again, it's more bite-sized. It seems more achievable, more attainable, and it's more motivating in that way rather than going for the big one right off the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of like those small wins, right? I mean, even when I am working with people in a coaching setting, they may have a really large goal, like you said, but I really encourage them to break it down. Let's not look at things more than, 3 months is like max, what is the next 3 months going to look like? Because you don't know what you don't know. You might get into, your development and your training and figure out, man, I'm actually pretty good at this. Like maybe this isn't an area that I want to focus my energy on. Maybe it's something else. And then you have the ability to shift and flex. And I think that's really important, but you wouldn't get that if you were only focusing on a year-long goal or a 2-year, 5-year goal, because you wouldn't be like examining or reflecting on it as regularly.
Yeah, definitely. And, another, visualization I can create for our listeners is think about even, going to school or to college. You have bite-sized modalities in the sense of you have classes for each of those like specialized subject ranges that you need to learn for your bachelor's degree or maybe even your master's degree or your doctorate. But then within that class, there's even modules and there's even sections of the class. So it really becomes more bite-sized. What we're talking about more so than anything, though, is the idea of more of microlearning. I know we did relate to microlearning in the past a couple episodes ago. So go back and watch that one if you'd like to learn a little bit more. It is built into a couple other topics we were discussing. But today we want to talk only about microlearning and the bite-sized modalities. I know in a coaching sense, we'll talk about, this person has this many goals. Okay, well, what do we need to do over the next month to hit this particular goal? In a sales aspect, we can say, I really want to get to, $1 million in sales per year. Okay, well, right now you're making 600,000. Let's take a look at what we need to do each and every month to get you there. And so the next month we're saying, okay, let's try to reach out to 30 new accounts. That's one per day, perhaps. And then the next month we're saying, okay, how'd that go? We only reached 3 people, 5 people. Probably would be reaching more, but just in case, then it's okay, we're going to reach out to 60. Now we have built the habit, and so we can reinforce that habit and build upon it, the idea of modalities.
Yeah, I like that you're talking about kind of building those habits, right? And I agree from an academic perspective. I can kind of give you a real life illustration if you'd like. So I teach in a doctorate program, and one of the hardest, most kind of anxiety provoking classes that they take is quantitative research methods, right? And the way that we really have structured the program is more bite size, that they start with psychometrics and they start understanding like what are the variables, and I don't want to get too statistically heavy there, right? But like what are the variables? Are they continuous? What does that look like? Kind of going down that psychometrics path. And then they get to my class in quantitative research. And instead of just going directly into this is how you conduct research using SPSS or R, whatever system you're using, we go back and we revisit those things and we say, okay, so let's go back and let's talk about those variables again. Right. Mm-hmm. And then to wrap it up into a bow, I guess they then take outcome measures or outcome methods and talk about that. And so it's kind of it's a nice way because there's chunks of it, those micro learnings that are reinforced through each class because they help in kind of deepening that understanding mm-hmm. of the content, even though it's a class that causes people a lot of angst at times.
Yes. Yeah. I can imagine it causes people angst. People will study psychology, not necessarily for the statistics behind it.
I love statistics. Oh, Morgan, I love it.
You're teaching it, of course. But anyhow, yes, I definitely agree with you. It's that bite size. Sometimes it's reflecting or revisiting topics as well. So I can think of a number of ways that I've done modalities with all sorts of teams. So I talked about sales. They're one I work on regularly. Mm-hmm. We also have bite-sized modalities when it comes to confidentiality training. Mm-hmm. And so we revisit previous ones, and all of our trainings are typically 20 to 25 minutes when it comes to the quick revisit ones. So we did a confidentiality training, but luckily they've already signed an NDA and they've already had like training when they were onboarding regarding confidentiality. So they signed the NDA, that's a 5-minute read and confirming you're good with it. Maybe you have questions, so it might be a 10-minute conversation. Now I'm talking about these are the bite sizes. Mm-hmm. Then you go into your orientation training, and it's split up into a number of modalities, and you go through, I think there's 6 sections, and you go through a section every other day for mm-hmm. your first 2 weeks. So you go through a section every other day for your first 2 weeks, pretty much. And then in one of those, it's talking all about confidentiality. So again, you're having a 30 or so minute training on confidentiality. Then a few months later, you have to go into a confidentiality training again that the whole team does. And it's talking about more prevalent topics. So something that needed to be revisited or something that multiple people had the same questions on. And so then it became a training. And then so most recently what we did, I'm trying to think, it was the lingo that was being used. Certain pieces of lingo that our team was using was only used internally and started to get used externally. And we're like, no, that's confidential. That's our IP. So we brought that back internal, and then we taught them what they're supposed to be saying externally. Mm-hmm. It wasn't really happening. It wasn't a concern. And, even if those terms get used, it's not like it's going to make or break the business, but it could lead to questions, especially from competitors or other vendors in the space. And so we revisit it and we explain it in a bite-sized manner. The mm-hmm. next confidentiality training will happen in summer to early fall. And that one is going to be all about IP and how IP works. And so they've already discussed IP. And then they went and IP was discussed, but it was more so on a lingo basis. And now they're going to go back and revisit IP, even though they've already been taught on it. Right. So revisiting it, but it's bite size. It's not to be overwhelming. It's not to take up too much of their time. And it's to just reinforce those behaviors regularly. Mm-hmm. That's a more, I guess, continuous type of modality. Right. Where we're revisiting it over and over again, but there are others where I know, Elizabeth, you were talking about your coaching. Mm-hmm. You're going to talk about this topic, then you build on it and talk about this next topic. It's almost like you build that hierarchy. Tell us a little bit about your coaching.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example from the sales perspective, right? And I think, from the sales perspective, you're kind of talking more about the responsibilities or the tasks that they need to do, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of my coaching is centered less on the tasks and more on kind of the people development and how does a person in a leadership role or wanting to go into a leadership role, how do they develop that leadership capacity, right? And so I think I've talked about this on a previous episode. I could not tell you which one at this point. We've had quite a few. So if our listeners want to go on a, binge listening session,
It'll be your Sherlock into our own episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I could probably figure it out, but that will definitely keep us not within that 15-minute window that we're looking at. But one of the things that I really employ with pretty much everyone, and I think it's a good, it's a framework. It's called the 70-20-10 framework. It's when we think about modalities and how adults learn, right? It's not just about training. It's not just about sitting there and taking a course and understanding the content and listening to a lecture, right? We as adults kind of need that variety, and some things work better for some people, others for other people, and really to be able to tailor that. This 70-20-10 framework is really nice. Just kind of high level overview of it. Happy to share a link though if people want to learn more. 70% coming from challenging experiences and assignments. So really the hands-on work. How do we get people immersed into the experiences so they can take it and understand it and then leave the experience, reflect on it to build that understanding, right? 20% from those developmental relationships. So think mentorship, think getting feedback from people, asking for feedback, whatever it may be, just kind of those developmental relationships that you have with others in which you work or kind of live your life and interact with. And then lastly, 10% from coursework and training. So I know we've had episodes before. We've talked about the difference between training and development and kind of what that all looks like. In a developmental sense, which is what my coaching is all about, I'm not saying that training is bad, right? I think training is a part of it. It just doesn't have to be all of it, right? Because it really is that more experiential piece, and really kind of the underlying assumption or foundation of the model is that leadership can be learned, right? We can improve our leadership. Sometimes we are really strong leaders and we have tons of great skills that we bring to the table. However, that doesn't mean we can't continue to build on it. So to me, development is a process, regardless of how skilled you are in any way. It doesn't mean you can't continue to learn.
We've discussed lifelong learning and how it is the most beneficial thing that you can participate in through life, because it's not just the mentee that learns, it's also the mentor. You gave a great example on within the 70-20-10 model, and I would love to give a real life example of that. I oversee a coach who's overseeing a team member of mine, and so within this, I was discussing with the coach and said, I've been coaching this individual. They do need a level of more personal work at this point in time, and I'm not necessarily the person for it. I need to bring in someone externally. So I brought in an external coach who I oversee, and I gave them feedback on, okay, so this individual, they're a supervisor, yet their time off sometimes has a few more issues than normal. I feel that their dependability is a little bit lower in that way. And on top of that, when the extra hours need to be worked, his team will work the extra hours, but he doesn't. And so that's a big concern. They're not leading by example. Then it's the next piece I had was, I'm concerned regarding the ability to be disagreeable. So as a leader in any sort of team, you sometimes, or in the management sense, you have to be disagreeable sometimes. Even leaders have to be disagreeable and say, and challenge the person against whatever they're doing. So his team was having issues with time off, call outs, lateness, but he's not leading by example there, right? So we want to talk about that. We want to touch base on it, and we want to reinforce that he needs to lead by example and then have those tough conversations. Those are just to name a few. There was much more in there, including, quality of work, things along those lines, enforcing that. All in all, it was really driving down to leading by example and having the difficult conversations with his team. So the coach, allows the individual to talk to her on what he feels he needs to work on as well. So not only does she have my feedback and another supervisor's feedback overseeing him, but has his own feedback for his own personal development. And you're going to build buy-in better that way. They then work together over the course of multiple months, and we're trying to hit certain situations head on. So the difficult conversation one, they're trying to hit that head on. He developed something called conversation debt, a conversation debt log for those difficult conversations he didn't have but should have had, and they kept revisiting it each time. So he would face a difficult conversation, handle it maybe 20% of the way. They then revisit it. And he's taken a course since then. He's taken that 10% coursework. They revisit it, they talk about it. The next time it happens, he's able to handle it 50% of the way. The next time it happens, he's able to handle it 60% of the way. Maybe we're starting to stall. And so then the coach brings in, okay, are you leading by example? So first they're going through the difficult conversations and decreasing the amount of conversation debt he has. Then they get to the next step of, are you leading by example? Are your leadership skills showing through? Do you have respect, right? And so each time they talk, they're bringing in a new subject that might be part of the reason he's having trouble with the leadership side. All in all, they worked through it, and now those conversations aren't deaded any longer. They're being had proactively, and that's preventing issues. All in all, I feel through bite-sized modalities of handling the situation, then thinking about this new subject material of leading by example, then thinking about, in the end, it was proactive work to prevent reactive negativity. So proactive coaching, even though it seems like a hard conversation, will prevent him from needing to have reactive disciplinary conversations. And so they work through it piece by piece of, okay, need to remove the conversation debt. That's step one. Okay, step two, how could we have improved the way that we handled that conversation debt? Step three, are there other conversations we're now hitting head on? Step four, what is he doing that he could do better with to improve that? Step five, another modality, another construct of, is he doing something well, or does he need to develop a better rapport with his team, so that respect? So I went through a number of steps to get there. And it was through conversations, his real life experience, and some coursework that the coach had given him to take to, reinforce those decisions and teach him a little bit more of that emotional intelligence surrounding it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many different ways, that you can think about modalities. Even just from a training perspective, there's so many different modalities, right? There's virtual training, there's in-person training, there's, more experiential training versus lecture style. Like, there's so many different ways to look at that. And I will say, for people who maybe work with a coach, or are coaches, or want to be, one of the things that I have to keep in mind, and I think there's maybe a little humility in here too, that in my opinion, I think more people should maybe consider just exploring what that looks like for them. Like, I know that I'm not the right coach for everyone, right? And so my style and kind of how I work with people generally is really to try to understand the root cause. So if you want to think about it as a root cause analysis, like what is causing this, right? Is it, in your example, is it confidence? Like, is it conflict management? Or maybe they're pretty conflict avoidant. Is it that the person doesn't have clear expectations, or they don't really understand their responsibilities all that well? And I could go on and on and on, right? But using coaching as a way to understand that root cause, and then building a system that's built on that scaffolding approach to help them explore and kind of figure out how to manage whatever that root cause is, right? Now, I know that that's kind of how I approach things typically. I'm kind of known for asking these like big questions that make people think for days and days. And that's kind of what I'm known for. You can ask my coachees, they'll tell you that. But then there are some coaches that are more directive, like maybe a little bit more kind of what you're talking about. Like, these are the steps, right? Like, this is what we're going to go through. And so just knowing, going back to the humility place of, am I the right fit for this person and what they need right now? Because if the answer is no, that's okay. I mean, I don't say I'm not a good fit, I don't want to work with you, goodbye. I'll say, hey, I have a whole group of people that I work with that I would love to introduce you to. I think you'd be a really good fit with this other coach, right? And I think that's where that partnership comes in, because then we're really working towards helping develop people, and thinking about it not from just a monetary perspective, like I'm going to make money as a coach, but my mission or crusade in life is to help people develop, right? So I say all of that to say, even within those coaching relationships, there are so many different ways we can explore it. There's models we can use, there's frameworks, there's tools, there's trainings, there's role plays. I hate role playing, but I do it sometimes. Especially if you know that that it would be beneficial. Like, you have a difficult conversation coming up. And then I would be remiss to say, like, we live in a world now where AI is a part of our world. And so one of our future episodes coming up is kind of thinking about the integration of AI as kind of a supplement to the more traditional one-on-one coaching scenario. So that'll be one for people to check out too. We have a couple really cool guests coming up, and I'm excited about that conversation.
Yeah, next week you guys should definitely tune in to the next conversation on AI and how this might help break down some conversations surrounding modalities and hitting things head on in a way, but also giving options, still building that emotional intelligence. But all in all, I just want to say modalities is the idea of micro-learning with the individual. So making bite-sized modalities is the idea of micro-learning, making each and every modality taught in its own way, revisiting them, going back and forth. What Elizabeth was saying is she gave a few examples of how these modalities are given or how there's different styles to give these modalities. And so oftentimes you see micro-learning happen in diverse formats. All in all, it's bite-sized learning that are brief sessions ranging from 5 to 25 minutes, which are meant to maximize engagement and minimize that cognitive load to ensure development does in fact happen. Too often we hear people tune out, and that's really why bite-sized modalities are the most important piece, plus the revisiting of them. So we kind of hinted to that, and we've hit it within this episode. Though it was all about bite-sized modalities, it's also the idea of reinforcement through bite-sized modalities.
Yeah. I think I'm into like an analogy space today because I'm thinking about it like a daisy, right? Like the center of the daisy is the issue you're trying to focus on, and then all of the petals all the way around it, right? Those are all of the different modalities and the ways that you can really create this full all-encompassing kind of support system to help build a strong daisy or strong skills. So there's my analogy. I think I've used a few more today, but
I have another one actually that goes right back to who we are. Is a detective's case isn't built one directional. They are learning pieces of information across the board from different witnesses, from different scenarios, from different photographs, from lab tests, things along those lines, but they have to piece all the pieces together for development. That's the whole idea. Is there's bite-sized modalities. It's all the different witnesses you're talking to. It's the lab work that's coming in. It's the photographs. It's the visiting the scene a number of times, visiting witnesses over and over again. So all in all, make those modalities more bite-sized, but then you have to be able to piece them together in the end. And you can do that with bite-sized modalities, connecting two modalities together, connecting two constructs together to better understand their interrelation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. So thank you. This was a really fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. So, we have, again, more coming up this month with some really cool guests. So please tune back in. Remember, we're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all of the places. So if you're listening and you want to actually see what we look like, you can join us on YouTube as well to be able to see that. So because we are doing this bite size, I think we conclude today and join back up next week. So with that, this concludes another intriguing episode of Organizational Sherlocks. I'm Elizabeth Fleming.
And I'm Morgan Ashworth, reminding you that the journey to success is an ongoing investigation.
As we talked about today, stay curious, stay strategic, and keep utilizing insights to decode your business mysteries.
Join us every Tuesday for your next Whodunit. This is Organizational Sherlocks closing today's case.
We will see you listeners next time.